Blood Time, the podcast that speaks to the bond, the emotion between coach and athlete at the interscholastic and intercollegiate level. Each interview, each segment will reveal that bond and what was learned, how they were transformed, and what each athlete took to the world at large from that transformation. These stories will warm your heart and astound you altogether. Submitted for your approval. Now it is Blood Time.
Hey Blood Time listeners, this is Maverick Peters over at MV Podcasting. Just want to give a quick shout out to our dear friends at Defense Soap. They're doing an incredible job staying on top of the world crisis that is COVID-19. Check them out if you get the chance at www.defensesoap.com. Thank you.
Hey guys, welcome to Blood Time. This is Coach Cimoroni, and I've got an amazing crew in today, but I want to thank Chad Bronstein, the president and CEO and founder of Philo, a phenomenal new company out of Chicago, Illinois. And I want to thank you, Chad. You were terrific in our last episode. Today, I have the first father and son team that we've been able to interview, and the honor to interview one of my mentors when I was growing up. He was coaching when I was in high school, and his son. We've got Larry Hoon and Adam Hoon. Larry Hoon, the retired head coach from Cleveland Heights High School, and current head coach at Bedford High School, Adam Hoon. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Larry, you have been coaching, or you coach for what, 38 years at Heights?
38 years, 35 as the head coach.
That is fantastic. You know, I have a little emotion here as well because my mother's brother, Lenny Arslanian, was the first captain and the first state place winner in the history of Heights wrestling.
That's right.
Mark Matavina, your mentor.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what's going on now in your life and some of the memories, some of the stories, some of the reminiscence of coaching at Heights High.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure that I did not start out with the idea of being a head wrestling coach.
Okay.
Football was the sport that I was interested in.
Right.
But I learned quickly that you'd better have a supporting staff around you.
Sure.
To do a good job at football. You couldn't do it all yourself.
Right.
And I was very much a guy who wanted to do it all himself.
Of course.
So I did not want, this was not going to work out. But the timing was such that the guy before me, Joe Geiger,
okay,
resigned after 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Truth be told, I was a very poor assistant. I was not a good assistant.
Okay. Was that because you wanted to do things your own way?
Oh, yes.
You weren't headstrong then, right?
Not at all. Not much.
He was like a shy flower in the corner, right?
And when I saw what I thought could be done in my limited, and believe me, limited knowledge of wrestling,
sure,
I thought I could do a better job.
Okay.
And so the situation presented itself where Joe Geiger resigned, and Mark Matavina, and I'll always give the props to Mark.
A Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll always remember him. He was a guy who rewarded loyalty.
Gotcha.
And he was a next man up kind of guy. He was not going to go searching, beating the bushes to try to find the best wrestling coach.
Gotcha.
Who's the next person up within the staff. And I always remembered that because, there's so many people get lost in the process.
Right.
Of, they're waiting for their chance, and their chance doesn't come because they hire somebody in front of them again.
Right.
He gave me that opportunity, and I was, woefully unprepared.
Okay.
But I thought I could learn the sport. I was very proud at that time.
Well, he was a heck of a tutor.
And he never ever mentioned to me that he was second in the nation at Purdue.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
There's so many of those guys that were in Northeast Ohio during that time. I mean,
and he was a war.
Gene Gibbons, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean,
he was a war veteran.
Sure.
And he had gone away in the Air Force and then came back to Purdue and was second in the nation.
Was he the impetus for Hoon's platoon? The very famous Hoon's platoon over the years?
No, that's another story.
Okay.
And we'll credit that one to Dave DiCarlo.
Oh, okay.
Who was the football coach at Heights several years after I had started.
Okay.
And he was always looking to get some, how should we say,
camaraderie?
Camaraderie with a group.
Esprit de corps.
Yes.
I like that.
And that was what he always looked for, some kind of catchphrase.
Sure.
And
so you were marketing back then.
Yeah.
Which I love. You were doing social media the way social media actually should be done, face to face, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. We love that. Well, that's fantastic. So you took over, and you took over what, in the mid 70s, right?
1973 was the first year.
And we were talking off air about Thor Zednick, your first captain, and also the son of the famous Zip Zednick, who was the head coach at Shaker when my dad was there.
Oh.
And Gene Weiss was one of his champions, from the famous Weiss family. And my dad tells a story about Thor. He said Zip brought him into the pool. He was like 2 years old. And he threw him in the pool. And he said, "Swim, Thor, swim." And Thor is just...
And he found a way.
Yeah, he found a way. But he was your first captain. But not long after that, something pretty amazing happened at Cleveland Heights High School. I think it was a class of 76.
76.
Talk to me
about that.
Well,
let's set the stage for that.
Please do.
We were a scrappy group,
sure,
but by no means skilled to our competition level around.
Gotcha.
Lake Erie League was a very, very competitive league.
Yeah, the old LEL.
Yeah, there were great coaches no matter where you looked, and I was the low one on the pole.
Okay.
Then the next year, so that would be the fall of 1974.
Right.
A family moved in by the name of Gutierrez.
Oh yeah, Freddie.
Freddie.
Yep.
Flying Fred, as he was known, because he would do incredible backflips and so after his wins.
I love it.
And the Gutierrezes had 5 children.
Mm-hmm.
Father was a professor at Case.
Okay.
Had 5 children, 4 boys and a girl. The 4 boys wrestled and were all way above average.
Sure.
They were clearly above average.
Right.
But what was really neat about this family was that they had charisma. They were magnets to other kids.
Sure.
I mean, the kids just came to them. It was just not anything you can explain. They just had a personality that
you cannot teach charisma. You either have it or you don't.
And they had it.
That's fantastic.
And Fred was a junior the first year. John was a senior. Jim was a sophomore, and Charlie was a 8th grader.
Okay.
Cindy knew as much wrestling as all of them, and was quickly became the head statistician.
Love that.
So there was a family that just came in and gave us instant credibility.
Sure.
And Fred did really well in tournaments, and somehow he meshed up with Tom Seals, who was a good wrestler, but didn't really have anybody that he could go with that would test.
But they were sort of around the same weight?
Yes.
Yes.
Tom was a 67, and Fred was 75.
Right.
Then there was Bob Cohen at the bottom.
Bobby Cohen.
Who was a...
little scrappy.
Yeah, very scrappy.
That's
and,
right. Jewish kid from
and
Cleveland
we had
Heights. I love it.
we had so much togetherness with Beechwood at the time, because every Monday he would go over to Beechwood and wrestle with Fisher, I think his name.
Fisher, Stone was there. Ricky Sorkin was there at that same time.
And they all knew each other long before they ever got to high school.
Oh yeah, that was all Longwood Y, right?
Yes.
Yep, Longwood Y and East Cleveland Y. Yep, back in the day.
So they kind of matured together. And, and it's just a strange, you can't explain this one either, but people had good teams and good individuals, but nobody had a bunch of them.
Great.
So 3 guys could win the state tournament, which will probably never happen in our lifetimes.
Well, you were right between the dynasty of Maple and the dynasty of Eds.
Pretty much.
So it was you guys. I'll finish the story. I don't want to.
No,
jump on the story.
Maple was kind of lightening up, at least in their strength.
Right.
Though they were
still tough.
They're very tough for us. And Eds was just Howard Ferguson had just taken the head job. I think the next year when Fred was a senior. I think he was there, and it was he was on a mission.
Sure.
And although he was kind of getting his team together and getting his coaches together,
right.
He wasn't quite there yet, but didn't take him long.
No, it didn't.
And so Fred placed 4th in the state.
Right.
Tom was 3rd.
Right. With
an incredible finish. He had a fall.
Wow.
Pinned the kid. Didn't need to. He was winning at the time, but he pinned the kid from Hilliard in the last second. So it was 4 minutes, 59 seconds on the clock, which we have a great picture of at that time. And, that 2 points was the difference between ourselves and Bay Village.
Who had the superstar Mike Deanna, right?
Who, as legend has it, and I'm not, I didn't see it, but I heard that he was so upset with not pinning Charlie Coase from Lakewood, that he put his fist into one of those little fire extinguisher cases, and many stitches later, he could not, he could not muster the strength that he needed to pin somebody, so he did not pin the next person in his finals match.
Right.
That was Charlie Coase that he couldn't.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So
what a confluence of events. That happened. And Bobby Cohen.
And Bobby won.
Bobby won it.
He was a guy. I can remember him sitting on the bed in the motel.
Right.
Studying the program.
Okay.
And at that time, you didn't have. We didn't think about scouting people in advance, or at least I didn't.
Right.
The only scouting we knew was this kid's record is this, and it says that in the program.
Sure.
And so he looked at that, and I remember him saying, I can beat this guy.
Right.
I can beat him.
Yeah.
And, geez, he did.
And you win by how many points?
1/2 of a point.
That is just a stunning confluence of it and story. It's just, you guys had to be.
It happened so fast that I didn't really know what happened.
Gotcha.
I was not expecting to be in that position.
Right.
And before I knew it, they're handing us a trophy.
Oh my gosh!
And
was Dwayne's match the last? Did Bay Village wrestle after that? Or
no? Bay Village wrestled after.
Like, had he won it when he got the pin?
No.
So there's other events after.
Deanna was wrestling at the same time as Seals was wrestling, because the first and second and third and fourth were wrestled at the same time.
Crazy.
Right.
So you didn't even know.
It's crazy.
And he did it.
And Adam, you weren't even born yet.
No, I was 2 years after that. He got his first title before he got his first child.
I'll be darned. So Adam, growing up as the coach who won the state title, what's that like? You had some other stories too.
That was just the big trophy that was off in the corner of our house.
Sure.
He didn't put it on any kind of display or on the mantle or anything like that.
Right.
I don't think Mom would have let him. But when I was old enough to ask, and I knew that we were going to Dad's wrestling matches all the time.
Right.
And Mom would tell us, because he would never tell us those things. But she'd tell us his team won the whole thing. They won the whole tournament for the whole state.
Well, that's kind of
again, being 5 or 6 years old when you first hear that, you're kind of like, oh wow, neat.
Yeah.
Can I get some candy?
It's
like you're kind of on to the next thing.
Yeah.
But as the years went on, my dad was, like you said, the loyalty thing. He always kept pictures of. He still has them. He has pictures of he has team photos of every team that he ever coached.
Magnificent.
And as the years went on, our little wall off on the side going to the downstairs bathroom, like, it just started filling and filling and filling, and it's got lots and lots of pictures on it, right?
It's a true gallery, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then as I got older and I started wrestling myself, and I realized that St. Ed's was St. Ed's, you look back,
right?
to win a team state title is something very, very significant to do. Because, like you said, you need more than one. You can't have one. You got to have more than one.
It's truly stunning with the intensity and the ability that St. Ed's had.
Yeah.
To
well, and then when as I grew older and grew into the sport, and I've been over there since in my older days. I've coached with some of those guys. I've taken some of my guys over there. That the mentality that's over there,
right.
And the mentality, and not just there, but a lot of rooms and a lot of the good programs we have in Northeast Ohio. But to see what it takes from more than just one individual. I've had a couple good guys myself in my tenure.
You've had some great
but
guys.
To have teams of guys like
it's
that
crazy.
Is
impressive. We just aired the Barry Broom interview.
Yeah.
And he talked about John Carroll's room, which was 40 guys in the room, 3-4 deep. You don't have that. But at St. Ed's,
all state placers.
You did. I was talking to our wonderful producer Maverick's father, Scott Peters, this morning, and he was talking about Mike Ryba from Chanel. Never wrestled a varsity match. Was a 2-time national champion JUCO. How about Gary Cerasi? Gary Cerasi never wrestled a varsity match. The guy gets hurt. He goes in there and wins a state title at Maple. So that's the kind of generational things that we saw. But also, too, Adam, you talked about it's part of your narrative. Your dad was a coach of a state championship team. So
he was the coach at Cleveland Heights.
Yeah.
And I spent my summers at Cleveland Heights. He ran a sports camp there all his years teaching. So that was part of my upbringing was we grew up in Mentor, lived in Mentor, went to school in Mentor, but my summers were in Cleveland Heights.
Yeah.
So I got to know all these kids from many, because it wasn't just Cleveland Heights kids there. It was Shaker, Orange, Beechwood, Garfield Heights, kids from all around went to this sports camp. It was like the first of its kind of thing. I mean, we had 300 kids at this camp every summer. A lot of his wrestlers and students he had in class were counselors, and so I really had a very diverse upbringing, and I am very appreciative of that because I got to meet a lot of different people from different cultures, different backgrounds, and things like that. So wrestling probably kind of started that and got it, but it was ultimately just where he landed at Cleveland Heights that allowed me, my brother and sister, to have a very unique upbringing. So
it's interesting because I look at you and you are the prototype blood type because you are the son of a wrestling coach, and now you're a wrestling coach at Bedford.
Just sort of happened.
Yeah, well, it didn't. I mean, it definitely happened. So tell me a little bit about what that blood tie, what that bond, what that inspiration did for you.
Well, I know the thing I probably most admire about my dad is when going through high school, going into college, and even when I started coaching, is the bonds he created with guys.
Yes.
To this day, maybe not his proudest story, but I know for a fact that he was a pen pal with a young man who was in prison.
Wow.
And the guy made some poor life choices.
Sure.
But felt that my dad was the guy who was a big influence in his life, and that he felt that writing to him was something important and something that might help keep him on the right path while he was doing his incarceration there. While he's spending some time there.
Spending some time at camp, right?
Yeah. And I think I just always thought to myself, like, gosh, I hope I never have to do that.
Sure.
But I want to be able to do that. Yes. If anybody's ever in that kind of position or situation, I want to be able to talk people into the right direction, point them in the right way. I by no means have made all the right choices in my life.
Who has?
Right. Yeah, but those are all learning. The goal is,
fail forward, right?
Right. I tell my students, mistakes are okay.
Yep.
Don't repeat them.
Exactly. You have a mistake acceptable culture, but don't repeat that.
Don't make the same silly mistakes over and over again, because then you're just not learning and you're not taking the lessons to heart. So I think for obvious reasons, the young man in prison was kind of a shock to me, and and I think he showed it to me one day. He's like, got this letter from and I was like, whoa, it's kind of impressive. But like I said, I haven't had to deal with that in my life, but I've had some young men who still, I'm only 16 years in compared to
that's a heck of
a lot of time, right? I feel like I've been doing it a while, but I've had some young guys come back and reach out to me already, or they ask for things and want my help, and I either tell them I can or I tell them I can't, depending on the situation. I let them know why or what they need to be doing. I try to give as much guidance as I can from both my growing up experience and my own experiences and stuff. So,
It's the empathy, though, right?
Yeah, you learn to feel for guys. I think my biggest part is I was very fortunate in the way I was brought up. Not every kid gets to have a fortunate upbringing. And
well, a lot of times we are the parent, or we are the father figure, or
I
we
feel
are
that
the
way a
brother
lot.
figure. Yeah, and,
Sure.
And so we have to take that with a lot of responsibility, a lot
Absolutely.
of seriousness.
So I just try to make sure kids understand that when they come to school or they come to wrestling practice, whatever, they know that I'm a guy that will tell them what they need to hear, when they need to hear it. You might not like it at the time, but trust and believe that I'm only telling you things you need to hear or that I truly believe in.
Yes.
And to make sure that you're doing the right things.
Well, it's interesting because I just wrote a letter to a kid who's a private now. He's doing boot camp. And this is a kid that literally we struggled at Beechwood when I was there for 3 years on my second tour. And we struggled to keep him in the program because he just had some substance abuse problems. And he's trying to, he's making the right decisions. He got on the team last year. He made it through the team, and he took 5th at the sectional. He didn't make, not a great wrestler, but he's in the Army now, and he's doing well. And his dad just emailed me. He said, "Dude, could you write him a letter?" Mm-hmm. And I wrote him a letter, and I don't care if he gives me one or not back, but that's what it's all about, right, Larry? Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about that mentality that you have, because you saw Heights change. And you talk about, right, the beautiful rainbow of experience, right, that you had growing up. And you saw Heights change from the early 70s to, when did you retire?
2008.
2008. So over those almost 40 years, that was a pretty different
Well, there's no
culture.
question that the demographics of the community has changed.
Sure.
I like to think for the better.
I think so.
I learned so much by the community changing as it did about other people and how other families like to do things.
Sure.
And it was a great blessing to me to be able to do that and to see that. I was very, as you wake up and one day and you say, "Wow, the school is not the way it looked when I came in."
Right.
But that was 30-some years ago.
Of course. Although the facade they just changed is beautiful.
Oh, it's
My
terrific.
goodness,
it's way different
it
now.
is gorgeous.
Beautiful.
They brought back the old school
And
beauty.
all due respect to the community.
Sure.
For doing it that way.
Sure.
They wanted that school to look the way it looked.
Right.
In 1928.
It was just gorgeous architecture.
It's terrific.
Yeah, it
People
really
would just drool over it.
I know.
And I feel real good to where things have gone and how things are looking there now and so on. It was just I was very, very concerned about how other communities viewed our community.
Of course.
And I took it very personally because these kids were my kids. Yeah. And if you hear a less than sensitive comment from somebody's parent or a fan or something like that, it hurts. And it doesn't hurt the ordinary person who has no vested interest.
Just walk a minute in my shoes, right, Larry?
Yeah.
Just walk a minute. Then you could maybe criticize. I just posted Teddy Roosevelt's "Man in the Arena."
Oh,
right.
Great quote.
Great quote, right? And I was getting another thing. A business associate sent that to me unbeknownst to me. I walked in and it made not my day, my month that I got that. I had to post it. I didn't, And so the critic, right?
The critic. It's not
Walk
the critic.
a moment in my shoes, and then we can criticize, So talking about that, Larry, you coached some amazing human beings over these 40 years almost. Talk to me about some of your most famous or favorite memories about coaching some of these young men.
Well, the one that, I was actually thinking about that, and the one that continues to stand out in this day was so we labored our way through 11 years of trying to figure out how to win the LEL.
Sure.
I mean, even with good teams.
Yeah.
We were just not good enough.
Hey, listen, you know what? At the ESC with Richmond Heights in there, we had some great Beechwood teams, and we never won. So I get it. I get that. That's a frustration when you have these teams that take 4th, 5th in the state and can't win the league. right? That's how good Northeast Ohio was.
Well, I thought we had it figured out.
Okay.
I thought. 1984.
Okay.
Valley Forge had a very good team.
Yeah.
With Pat Cimoroni.
Oh yeah.
And it was lining up. Coaches of that era, Coach I and Paporis, and that.
Yeah.
We'd sit around forever and doodle our, if we move this guy here and
right.
What we do? Well, we lined up pretty well with Forge, except for one weight class.
Okay.
In the 185.
All right.
They had a pretty good kid. Ours, not so good.
Right.
But willing.
Yeah.
A willing kid, but just not as skilled as the others.
Sure.
Well, now this kid from Forge twisted his ankle, hurt his shoulder, did something, and for 2 or 3 weeks he was out.
Wow.
Now, I'm salivating the whole time.
Right.
This is our chance.
Right.
We get this kid ready, our kid ready, Steve McKenzie.
Okay.
Got him ready. We could slap a cradle on in good Beechwood fashion. We could slap a
cradle
on anybody if they just put their head to the knee.
Yeah.
And this new kid that they had, which I'd watched for 3 weeks straight.
Right.
This kid is going to make that mistake, and we're working on it.
Yeah.
Well, we show up to the weigh-in at Valley Forge.
Right.
And lo and behold, their first line kid is ready to go. And I thought, no.
Miraculously.
Not after all this, no.
Miraculously.
Well, and as we look back on it now, good, because we didn't want to beat a team because they didn't have a guy in there.
Right.
Well, they had the guy in there, but he was not in the shape that he was 3 or 4 weeks earlier.
Sure.
Our kid did the same things that he did in practice. He slapped a cradle on that guy 3 different times and put him on his back. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Wow.
And he wins the match, which sets us in great position because our heavyweight was a monster and theirs wasn't.
Right.
And the heavyweight just came up and said, "Dude, do you want me to pin him?"
Yeah.
I said, "What do you mean you want me to pin him?" Of course I want you to pin him. Pin him as fast as you can.
Get out
of here.
Get out of here. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing I remember about that match was we were losing 26 to 6.
Wow.
At the halftime. Remember, we had breaks.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Dual meets.
Yeah, because, we had a full team.
Right.
Yeah, back in the day, right?
We won the final. We won the final 6 matches.
Oh, wow.
3 of them by pins.
Wow.
Some expected, some not.
Sure.
And, I thought, here we are again.
Right.
One more year as the second best team in the league.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out that way, and the kid that was primarily responsible for that was a guy who was running for a judgeship in Illinois.
I'll be darned.
This tomorrow or whenever the election
What's
day
his
is
name?
there.
What's his
Steve McKenzie.
Steve McKenzie.
Get out and vote, Illinois people.
I like it.
Right.
Steve
I like
McKenzie.
it. I
Vote
like
for
it.
Steve. He's a wrestler, and
That's
he
right.
won't do you wrong.
That's right. He will do it when the chips are down. So Steve McKenzie, huh? He's your guy that did it, and he's now what? Running for judge in Illinois?
In the Chicago area.
That is fantastic.
Illinois.
That is fantastic. And, it's interesting, Chicago, but just recently, who moved out of Chicago was Lee Kemp, who's obviously one of our superstars in the history of our state, let alone country. And I interviewed him a few months back, and he talked about one of the most important guys in his career was his drill partner in the University of Wisconsin, who really never did anything in the national tournament, but was incredibly important to Lee for his development because he was there every day, and they coached each other. And this guy would be that guy for him. And it sounds like maybe McKenzie was that guy for your team to some degree.
He was that night.
Yeah,
he was that night.
That's a great story. And Adam, when you hear these stories, and I know that you're the district rep for the state here in Northeast Ohio and very involved with making it a fair playing field, if you will, for Northeast Ohio. Tell me a little bit about some of those stories that your dad, has shared with you and that you've actually witnessed, and what has inspired you to become that, voice for Northeast Ohio and, of course, in your coaching career.
Well, I would say it wasn't so much any one thing that Dad did. I would say it's growing up, I was Larry Hoon's son.
Sure.
And I know everywhere I went, after every match, any coach's hand I shook, say, "Hey, tell your dad I said hi. Tell your dad I said hi." I'm like, "Yeah, great. I'll write that down." I just lost your kid. Thanks.
That's right. You saw.
But I know so many coaches and so many people and so many wrestling programs that it is all of them are my family. Not just Bedford, not just Heights, not just Menor.
We are blood. We are blood, right?
I love all wrestling, and I love all kids who want to wrestle. It's a cool thing to do, and I love all the coaches. And I want to see it done the right way from a broad perspective, national perspective. I want to make sure all kids are getting the same opportunities and shots. I ultimately didn't take this position because I wanted to see the Northeast Ohio dominate the state tournament.
Well, then that would be counterintuitive to what we're trying to do.
Because I'm happy to see kids from other districts win too.
If they're better, they're better.
Right.
But let's have inclusion, right?
Right. Yeah. And it really came from, when I had a couple Cleveland coaches mention to me that their kids would not show up to a sectional tournament.
That's got to break your heart.
Because they sort of knew what they were going up against. If they were at, same tournament with Eds, Elyria, or Wadsworth or something like that, they wouldn't bother showing up. And this is maybe a kid who had just won his league tournament the week before, but wouldn't bother showing up to sectional because he knew how stacked it was.
That's truly terrible for your sport.
That's awful.
That's the worst you can get.
Because I would love nothing more than a kid who wrestled in Cleveland, had a great experience, a great time, come back then and help continue the process in those city schools, where kids don't have as many opportunities possibly.
Right.
But I just want to make sure it's being done right. And I know things will ultimately, cream rises to the top. Your best guys are always going to win kind of thing. But
you never know. I mean, you never know. This guy can catch fire, right? I'm
a science teacher, so I like numbers, I like data, and I will tell you that things will happen consistently for most things, but there's always an anomaly. There's always some random things that happen in the world, and I'm all for that too. I love the underdogs, and I love kids that, maybe he didn't practice great all year, but he's feeling himself, and he's feeling good, and he's at the end of the year and feeling great, and if he sees a good bracket, and I was a bracket guy. I guess I was kind of like Bobby Cohen a little bit.
I like that.
I would look at brackets and be like, all right, this guy's good. I know he's from Maple, so he's got to be good. And
sounds like a little bit of Larry Hoon.
I would think ahead. Maybe sometimes I outthought myself, but if any kid can step in and know that he's been given the best opportunity, his coach knows that he's been placed in the best possible bracket, best possible tournament for an opportunity to get to the state tournament, then that's what I'm looking for. I want to make sure all kids feel that they're not being given any kind of disadvantage or slight just because they're not one of the top teams.
If they don't show up because of that,
that was probably the most disheartening thing to me. Sure. So when the opportunity came to step up and be a representative for our district down at the state level, I was like, no problem.
Well,
it's not a problem.
We're very happy that you've done that, and you've been a great representative of our area. And speaking of that, Mark Haywald, the first state champ in the history of Beechwood, he was third in the sectional. He caught fire at the district, and you know what? He was state champ. So it happens, and that's the kind of story we do not want not to include moving forward.
Absolutely.
And so, Adam, you've coached a lot of young men. Is there any stories that you'd like to share with us that now that are out in the real world, like running for judges and doing? I
don't have anybody that big and fancy
but
yet.
There's got to be some other things that are really heartwarming.
Well, I've got several young men that that are doing well and are successful. I've got some young men that are fathers now themselves.
Sure.
And they're always texting me, letting me know, hey, Hoon, this daddy stuff's no joke. And I said,
well, success is always relative, too, right?
Killing, right? Yeah. You thought I was kidding. I was like, you just make sure you be a good dad and don't worry about all this wrestling stuff.
Right.
But I got a couple, I got a guy who's on an NFL roster right now, and I'm very happy to see that for him. I'm very happy. But
you want to mention his name?
Sure. That's Marquise Copeland.
Marquise Copeland.
Yeah,
what did he wrestle for you?
He wrestled 220.
Wow.
He let his college coaches get in his head, though. He didn't wrestle his senior year. He would have probably, I don't want to say, I could say it now. He would have walked to the state finals and wrestled an Ed's kid probably that year.
Okay.
Just athletically gifted beyond anything and enjoyed learning the sport.
Sure.
But he ended up playing football at Cincinnati for Luke Fickle.
Oh, sure.
Another wrestling guy. So I was always texting Fickle and saying, hey, just Just take him down. Show him. He thinks he's fancy stuff now. Show him what's up and let him know. And
that's right. Like, Fickle was badass,
right,
man.
And I showed him videos of Fickle before he went down there. I said, just so you know the guy you're about to go play for. He's being nice to you now because he's recruiting you.
Right. When
you get down there, you were about to be his drill partner.
You know, it's funny, too, because the NFL, everybody's a badass, right?
Yeah.
So there's a funny story. Neil Carmich is a friend of mine. He's a Beechwood guy who's a great sports agent, and he represented Stephen Neal. Never played Stephen Neal, two-time NCAA champion, right? Never played a down of football in college. Goes into plays, becomes a world champion, all-pro at the New England Patriots. And Larry McGinnis, or Lawrence McGinnis, remember? He was a badass middle linebacker, started getting in his face, and Neal just put him on his head. And that was it, man.
Nice.
When that was it.
You don't see really talking about that on
right, he doesn't, but he was put on his head, right?
Sure.
So Willie McGinnis, sorry, not Larry. But the greatest compliment was what Belichick said in the last Super Bowl. He said the hardest working guy he ever had, was him. Because they were talking about Edelman, who was the second hardest working guy in the history of the Patriots.
I told people all the time, I wished football season was after wrestling season. Because if I could walk into my football seasons in the shape I was for wrestling.
Oh, please. 2-a-days were nothing.
Football would be no joke.
Absolutely.
You go to 2-a-days, though, after a summer of swimming at the pool and hanging out with your friends and stuff. And 2-a-days feel like murder.
Right. Well, I looked forward to this interview tremendously, guys. You guys have been, I could go on and on with both of you. And it's beautiful to see a father-son relationship.
You know, if I could, please do. I want to say something about a relationship of a father. You know, I was always mindful of not to push your kid. I did not want to be that parent you hear bellowing in the stands about. My idea was to sit way back there.
Yes.
And if I was going to say anything, it was going to be into my coat or something like that. But I was never going to be audibly heard.
Right.
Oh, I heard it. Yeah. Nobody else could hear it, but I heard it.
Yeah. But
I knew where to look.
That's the beauty, right? He was in your head, right?
Well,
in a good way.
In a good way. Like it was never. Yeah. It was always just a step on the mat, look up to the corner of the gym.
Yeah.
If I knew he was going to be there, because he had a lot of matches, sometimes the same nights we did, things like that. Probably because he coached and he knew the sport well. You know, it was always at the right moment. Keep your head up. Yeah. And, my coach is standing right here. And I didn't hear a darn word he said. Yeah. But I kind of look and see. Or I just give a little head nod. And, I know what you're saying. And go. But, never was I pushed. And I tell kids nowadays when I have kids say, should I get my kid into wrestling? Wrestling is great. I'm like, wrestling is great. Yeah. But don't push your kid into it. Yeah. It's one of the sports that... they will hate it. If you make them go, if you make them do it, it's not something to make anybody do.
You have to organically, because this sport just is either in your DNA or it's not. You can't force somebody to love wrestling.
For sure.
And, I have two sons and they didn't sniff a wrestling mat. But they're great kids.
Right.
They're great kids. And they are so my pride and joy, But I know what you're saying, Larry, that parent that is just living vicariously through the kid is doing the kid such a disservice.
Right. And you see that... You see that animosity building up.
That dynamic
as
is
the
toxic.
Years go on, and the kids not liking it. Yeah. The parents, in a not
right.
Yeah.
Can't be good for the blood pressure.
No.
It's not good.
The family
it's not
dynamic.
good for anybody.
Yeah, the family dynamic is just toxic at that point.
But to Adam's credit and to the kids that he wrestled.
Yes.
From the Heights. Yeah. They were some of the most exciting matches I've ever seen.
Wow.
Because you knew how it was going to play out. Right. Not so much who was going to win, but how the effort was going to play out.
Right.
Here's one kid who did not want, his record to be tarnished by his dad's team.
Right.
And there's the kid at Heights who did not want to get beat by the coach's son who wrestles on another team.
Of course.
So, but it always brought out the best in both of them. Because they pretty much knew each other before they ever got there together to wrestle. Right. But their matches were so competitive and so full of emotion.
Yes.
And never a boil over at either spot.
I love that.
When something went wrong.
Yeah.
They took it and they embraced at the end. They shook hands and hugged at the end, which is you don't see that unless you know that those two people have a history.
And there's a respect, a mutual respect there. And I think too, that's what our sport still does. There's still that mutual respect. It's a very honest sport. We like to say that in this. And it's doesn't really lend itself much to the trash talking, even though we still see a little bit of it. And it doesn't lend itself to the trash talking.
Well, it's that one-on-one battle. You get exposed.
You get exposed.
If you're going to talk, you better back it up.
You can't hide.
You cannot hide.
There's no, the team didn't play great.
Right.
Or, our team didn't have a good practice that week.
Right.
It doesn't exclude you.
That's right.
What did you do?
Exactly.
And I tell guys all the time, this in this day and age with kids really making sure they look good and social media and all that stuff. And I got a great persona.
Yep.
This sport will drop that persona like a bad habit real quick, because somebody, especially now, some kid in the stands, catch you on video getting pinned by somebody,
right,
and then blast you on your social media or something like that.
No question about it.
I can only imagine.
That's why I love
back when we wrestled, and I wrestled with guys, and
right.
Man, there might have been some trash talking if we had social media back between Heights and me guys, but it would have been fun.
Yeah,
it would have been fun. So.
Yeah. Well, but you had the imprimatur to bust each other's balls.
But I knew
because you knew.
He would always tell me, he was very upfront with me. I think probably freshman year when we knew I was going to be wrestling at Heights my first time.
Sure.
He said, I'm going to coach this guy to beat you.
Yeah.
He's like, but you know him too. Like I knew his guys.
Right.
I knew. He's like, and you know what you have to do to beat him. And I was like. He's like, and your coach will take care of you.
Exactly right.
I always had confidence in his coach, which was a great, it was a great relief to me to know that he was being coached by good people.
Sure. They were great people.
Yeah. Joe Hada.
I mean, Menor was.
And the fact that they were good friends.
Sure.
And probably more so Joe with my mom, because Dad was busy coaching, so Joe understood if there was a problem ever, or if I wasn't doing what I should be doing, there was a phone call to Mom.
Yeah.
And I think one day I missed practice because he sat me in his office and made sure I got my social studies homework done.
Oh,
that was not one of my favorite subjects. But,
right.
Mom made sure that got taken care of. But he knew I was in good hands, and when he treated me just as I know my parents would have treated me, I knew that I was not going to seek. There's no getting out of anything. I was going to get the same treatment in all directions from anybody I had, any teacher, because they all knew my parents. It was just that kind of world I was in. And
the consistency of the message.
Right. And to know that what he was teaching me wrestling-wise and how to work was right in line with what Dad was doing at Heights with his guys.
I love it.
I saw our teams compete in the past, and I knew that we could compete with them. And when we wrestled them, it was always a great time. So that was never
that was the dynamic.
Yeah, it was fun, and he officially wouldn't coach against me. He would sit in the stands during my match, or when my brother went through the same thing, he would sit in the stands for that one match.
Sure,
and then he'd come out and shake our hands.
Absolutely.
When it was over, and we'd go on with our day.
And then you did have
impressive.
Well, it's interesting because you did have one time where you actually coached against him, right?
I think it might end up being a couple times, but we were in the LEL when I started at Bedford. I was not the head coach yet. Sean Jackson, who wrestled for Dad, was the head coach at the time.
See, that's really cool.
Right. There's all the family loops there, and I've known Sean since I was a little boy.
Sure.
And Sean was the head coach at the time. We were LEL tournament a couple times. I don't know how many times. Maybe dueled twice, 3 times in that time. But I remember the last time.
Yes.
And it was the LEL meet in Lorraine.
Okay.
And we had a dual meet with Heights.
Right.
It was like a dual meet tournament day.
Sure,
we were all mixing matches. And we were against Heights. It might have been the last match of the day. And, I was, again, young, probably not a great assistant. I was just there to work out with the guys, not to think about stuff.
Yeah.
But Sean had it in his head. We had a couple guys weighed in a weight class. And, Sean had this guy hold back and not report to the table, and Dad sent his guy, and we sent some other bum or something. I don't know. And he got beat, and then we stuck our good guy up a weight and pinned his next guy. And I think Dad was caught off guard. I was caught off guard because I didn't know what was going on.
Totally outcoached it.
Oh my goodness gracious!
I think Sean
by a protege.
Right.
Yeah.
On that day, in that moment, Sean must have got him.
The teacher becomes the student.
All I remember was going through the line, shaking hands.
Yeah.
And I get to Dad, and he just kind of shakes my hand and keeps going. And I was like, oh. I felt like an abandoned child kind of thing. I was like, Dad. And I was like, he's really mad. And I kind of looked at Sean. I was like, why'd you do that? Like, could have lost. Like, no big deal. And I was like, oh, my dad's mad at me. But then, we come back around the line. He's dad again. Yeah, but I was just like, holy smokes. I was like, and then I looked at Sean. I was like, good work. I was like, you did a good one.
Yes,
so we won the league that year. I think we went back to back in 6-7 and 7-8.
Wow. And what I'm hearing from the Hoons right here is humility, love, empathy. I'm just so incredibly impressed with you guys. Always have been with you, Larry, and now that I get to know you a little better. Adam, no, you're a great progenitor of this man over here.
Thank you.
And so I would love to go on and on. I could go on and on and talk to you guys about it, but we're at the end of our interview, and I wanted just to open it up to you guys to say anything you'd like to say to the kids that you coached over the years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity that they saw clear to come out for the sport. It's a risk to do that. You put yourself on the line and you could look like a fool in front of all of your friends. You had the courage to come out, and for that, I give them all due respect.
And he is now saluting you, those that are not watching.
The key cog to all this is a supportive wife. Rhonda learned how to become. She was always supportive, right, but she probably wasn't included as much, and that's my fault.
Okay.
I didn't know how mothering she could get to a group of people year after year after year, and she was just what they needed.
Help me, Rhonda. She did help
and
you.
She did.
And she did.
And she did.
God bless. That's yes. Well, to Hoon's platoons, I salute you. And
Thank
Adam, you've got the last word.
I learn something new every year.
Awesome.
It's for me. I love teaching. I love working with kids. I've always done it. I was the kid babysitting kids in the neighborhood when I was like 10 years old. So I've always enjoyed working with kids. But when they come to wrestle for you, like you said, they're making that commitment. They're taking a step and they're trusting and believing, or at least coming to try to find out about what you might have to offer.
Right.
So for those guys that have stuck it out, or even those who haven't, in the other direction from my Marquise Copeland is a young man who was always ineligible, never really a good wrestler at all.
Okay.
And I feel like me and my assistants were always having conversations about doing the right things, making good choices in school, blah, blah, blah. I got an email 2 years after he finally made himself out of high school. And the first lines just were, "You were right."
Oh,
and he's like, "Man, this world doesn't care about me unless I've got a high school diploma and a good," he's like, "I'm working now. I'm trying to improve on that, And that's all I ask for, is that at some point you all figure it out. And everyone's got different learning curves, right?
Story.
That's all I cared about, is that he, that's one of the guys, and I wish I'd hear from maybe a couple others too. But the ones that I wasn't too sure what was going to happen to him, to know that he figured it out. The light bulb came on at some point. That that's what I'm most proud of.
You'll get them.
Ultimately, as long as they learn, and then the lessons learned is what's important. And if you carry that through life and apply it to then the people you come in contact with, then. Right. It's like each one teach one, right? Everybody keeps passing lessons on down the road, and
the ripple effect.
Yeah,
this is what this is all about. We are blood. The ripple effect. And to the Hoons, I salute you both.
Thank you.
To the Hoons platoon, maybe the next generation Hoons platoons. To Larry and to Adam, thank you so much. We are blood. I want to leave you with this thought of the day. Find some one thing, idea, spirit, state of being to be absolutely madly passionate in love with.